Hey everyone, and welcome to Everyday English Pod, your go-to podcast for boosting your English. I'm Leo, and I'm thrilled you're here. If you're looking to sharpen your English listening and writing, you've definitely come to the right place. In each episode, we'll dive into real-life scenarios and examples that'll help you understand English in a natural, everyday way. Pay close attention to how words are used in context, and I encourage you to jot down any new things you learn. And hey, if you find this helpful, a quick like or share really supports the show. Let's kick things off with a couple of questions to get your English engines going. First up, have you ever made a blunder while trying to speak English? How did you recover? And second, have you ever been in a situation where you had to quickly understand someone speaking English to you? Think about your responses as we jump into today's story. Today, I want to share a story about my friend, Maya. Maya is a talented graphic designer. She's been working for a small company for a few years, and she's incredibly dedicated. One day, her boss gave her a fantastic opportunity to present her designs to a potential client. This client was a big deal, and securing their business would be a huge win for the company. Maya prepared meticulously. She refined her designs, practiced her presentation, and even rehearsed answering possible questions from the client. But when the day came for the presentation, disaster struck. She completely forgot a crucial part of her presentation: the file with the finalized design mock-up. The client looked a bit taken aback. Maya had a choice. She could panic, apologize profusely, and potentially lose the opportunity. Or she could think on her feet. Instead of crumbling under pressure, Maya took a deep breath. She quickly contacted her colleague, Ben, and asked him to email her the files. Within minutes, she had them on her tablet and was able to project them for the client. She explained the situation calmly and professionally, emphasizing the collaborative process and the client's input. The client, impressed by her composure and quick thinking, ended up awarding the company the project. So, what can we learn from Maya's experience? Well, it's simple. Mistakes happen even when we're well prepared. The key is to stay calm, think quickly, and find a solution. If Maya had panicked, she might have lost a major opportunity. Now, let's circle back to our question. If you were in Maya's shoes, what would you have done? Take a moment to think about it and try to write your answer in English. This is fantastic practice for both your listening and writing skills. Here's another scenario to consider. Imagine you're working at a language exchange event, and someone gets frustrated because they can't understand you. How would you handle that? Would you apologize and offer to try speaking more slowly, or would you get defensive? Remember, in language learning, communication is key. Let me tell you about Liam. Liam is a language exchange facilitator. One evening, a participant complained that Liam was speaking too quickly. Liam could have dismissed the complaint, but instead, he listened attentively. He apologized, offered to speak more slowly, and even suggested using visual aid. The participant appreciated his patience and understanding. Because of Liam's positive approach, the participant continued attending the exchange, and it became even more popular. What can we learn from Liam? That good communication and a positive attitude can turn a potentially awkward situation into a positive experience. Now, let me ask you, have you ever had a difficult time understanding someone speaking English? How did you react? Try writing your response in English to practice your writing skills. Let's move on to another real-life example. My friend, Chloe, went to a bookstore to find a specific English grammar book. She asked the bookseller for help, but the bookseller was quite unhelpful. They answered her questions curtly and didn't seem interested in assisting her. Chloe could have just left and gone to another bookstore. But instead, she remained polite and asked to speak to another staff member. The second staff member was much more helpful. They listened to Chloe's needs, showed her different options, and gave her excellent recommendations. Chloe found the perfect book. This story teaches us something important. When we encounter unhelpful or unfriendly people, we shouldn't always react with frustration. Sometimes, staying calm and seeking another solution is the best approach. So, have you ever had a negative experience trying to communicate in English? What did you do? Reflect on that and write your response in English to further develop your writing skills. Let's consider another situation. My neighbor, Noah, was walking home from work one day when he saw someone collapse on the sidewalk. Many people walked by, but Noah rushed to help. He checked if the person was conscious and called for an ambulance. While waiting, he spoke to the person, offering reassurance and comfort. The paramedics later said that Noah's quick action had been crucial. This story reminds us that even small actions can have a big impact. Have you ever helped someone who needed assistance? Maybe you helped a tourist with directions or offered support to a classmate struggling with an English assignment. Helping others not only benefits them but also makes us feel good. Now, think about this. If you saw someone struggling to understand English, what would you do to help? Try answering in English to practice expressing your thoughts. Now, let's talk about a common challenge: mishearing something in English. This can be especially tricky when dealing with slang or accent. Imagine you're in a meeting and your colleague says something that sounds like ice cream, but it doesn't make sense in context. Your heart might race a little, wondering if you missed something important. This happened to my friend, Olivia. She was in a conference call with people from different countries. Someone mentioned a piece of cake. Olivia, focusing hard to understand the various accents, initially thought they said, a piece of Kate. She was confused. Was there a person named Kate involved? Instead of panicking, she politely asked for clarification. It turned out they were using the idiom, a piece of cake, meaning something was easy. Olivia's story teaches us that it's okay to ask for clarification. Don't be afraid to say, "Excuse me, could you repeat that?" Or, "I'm not sure I understood. Could you explain?" It's much better to clarify than to pretend you understand and risk making a mistake. So, have you ever misheard something in English? What did you do? Did you ask for clarification, or did you try to guess the meaning? Writing about your experience can help you remember strategies for handling similar situations in the future. And lastly, let's discuss another common issue: forgetting English vocabulary. It's frustrating when you know a word but can't quite recall it in the moment. Imagine you're writing an email, and you can't remember the word for appointment. What do you do? My cousin, Finn, faced this all the time when he first started working in an English-speaking office. He'd often pause mid-sentence, searching for the right word. Instead of getting discouraged, Finn started keeping a vocabulary journal. He wrote down new words and phrases, reviewed them regularly, and actively tried to use them in conversations. He also learned strategies for working around forgotten words, like using synonyms or describing the word. Finn's experience shows us that forgetting words is normal. The key is to actively build your vocabulary and develop strategies for communicating even when you can't recall the perfect word. So, have you ever forgotten a word in English? How did you handle it? Did you try to describe it, use a synonym, or look it up? Writing about your strategies can help you become a more confident communicator. Well, that's all the time we have for today's episode of Language Leap. I hope these stories and tips have been helpful in your English learning journey. Remember, keep practicing, stay positive, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. They're all part of the process. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit that like button and share it with your fellow English learners. I'm Leo, and I'll be back soon with more ways to help you leap forward in your language skills. Welcome back to Everyday English Pod, everyone. I'm Leo, and I'm so glad you're tuning in again. In our last episode, we talked about navigating mistakes, handling misunderstandings, and building your vocabulary in English. If you missed it, be sure to check it out. Today, we're going to explore another common experience for English learners: feeling overwhelmed by the amount there is to learn. It's easy to look at native speakers and think, Wow, I'll never know all those words and grammar rules. Has that thought ever crossed your mind? And have you ever started learning something new in English, like a complex grammar concept, and felt completely lost? Think about those feelings as we delve into our story today. Our story is about my friend, Samira. Samira is a bright and motivated student who decided to learn English to pursue her master's degree in an English-speaking country. She was excited at first, signing up for online courses, downloading language learning apps, and even trying to watch English movies. But after a few weeks, the sheer volume of new vocabulary, grammar rules, and pronunciation challenges started to feel like a massive mountain she couldn't possibly climb. Samira started feeling discouraged. She'd look at advanced English speakers and think, how did they learn all of this? It seems impossible. She began to doubt her ability to ever become fluent. Some days, she felt so overwhelmed that she didn't even want to open her English textbook. She'd spend hours scrolling through social media instead, feeling guilty but unable to face the daunting task of studying. One afternoon, Samira confided in her older brother, Omar, who had also learned English as a second language. Omar listened patiently to her frustrations. He nodded understandingly and then shared his own experience. He told her that he had felt the exact same way when he was starting out. He explained that learning a language isn't a race. It's a journey made up of many small steps. Omar gave Samira some practical advice. He suggested she break down her learning goals into smaller, more manageable chunks. Instead of trying to learn hundreds of new words a week, he suggested focusing on just 10 or 15. Instead of trying to master complex grammar rules all at once, he advised her to tackle one concept at a time. He also encouraged her to celebrate her small victories, like understanding a new phrase in a movie or successfully using a new word in a sentence. Omar also emphasized the importance of consistency over intensity. He told Samira that studying for just 30 minutes every day was more effective than trying to cram for hours once a week. He encouraged her to find enjoyable ways to learn, like watching her favorite TV shows in English with subtitles, listening to English music, or finding an online language exchange partner to practice speaking in a relaxed setting. Samira took her brother's advice to heart. She started setting smaller, achievable goals for herself. She focused on learning a few new words each day, reviewed them regularly, and tried to use them in her writing and speaking practice. She started watching English sitcoms she enjoyed, paying attention to the way the characters spoke in everyday situations. She also found a language exchange partner online, and they would chat in English for 30 minutes a couple of times a week. Slowly but surely, Samira started to feel less overwhelmed. She began to see progress, even if it was gradual. Each new word she learned, each conversation she had, and each grammar concept she understood gave her a sense of accomplishment and motivated her to keep going. She realized that the mountain of English learning wasn't going to disappear overnight, but by taking one step at a time, she was definitely making her way up. So, what can we learn from Samira's experience? It's that feeling overwhelmed when learning English or anything new is completely normal. The key is to break down the big task into smaller, more manageable steps. Celebrate your progress, no matter how small it seems, and remember that consistency is more important than trying to do everything at once. Now, let's think back to our initial questions. Have you ever felt overwhelmed by the amount there is to learn in English? What did you do to cope with that feeling? And have you ever started learning a new English concept and felt completely lost? How did you try to understand it better? Take a moment to reflect on your own experiences and try to write down your thoughts in English. Sharing your strategies can also help other learners. Here's another situation to consider. Imagine you're trying to learn a new English pronunciation, and it feels incredibly difficult. You try again and again, but it just doesn't sound right. What would you do? Would you give up, or would you try a different approach? Let me tell you about my friend, Kenji. Kenji was learning English, and he really struggled with the th sound. He would practice it repeatedly, but it always came out sounding like an S or a Z. He felt frustrated and was about to give up on perfecting it. But then, he found a video online that explained the mouth and tongue placement in a different way. He tried the new technique, and suddenly, he could make the th sound correctly. What can we learn from Kenji? That if you're struggling with something in English, don't be afraid to try different approaches and resources. Sometimes, a new explanation or a different perspective can make all the difference. Now, let me ask you, have you ever struggled with a particular aspect of English, like pronunciation or grammar? What did you do to overcome that challenge? Try writing your answer in English to practice your writing skills. Let's move on to another common hurdle: comparing your English skills to others. It's easy to feel discouraged when you hear someone speaking more fluently or using more advanced vocabulary than you. What can we learn from Kenji? That if My colleague Aisha experienced this a lot. She was learning English in a class with people who seemed to be progressing much faster than she was. She would hear them speaking confidently and using complex grammar, and she would feel inadequate. She started to doubt her own abilities and even considered quitting the class. One day, her teacher noticed her quietness and asked her what was wrong. Aisha confessed that she felt discouraged because she wasn't progressing as quickly as her classmates. Her teacher reassured her that everyone learns at their own pace. She emphasized that comparing herself to others wasn't helpful and that the most important thing was to focus on her own progress. Aisha's teacher encouraged her to celebrate her own achievements, no matter how small, and to remember how far she had already come. Aisha took her teacher's advice to heart. She stopped comparing herself to her classmates and started focusing on her own learning journey. She began to appreciate the progress she was making, even if it was gradual. This shift in mindset made her feel more motivated and helped her to enjoy the learning process again. So, what can we learn from Aisha's experience? That comparing yourself to other English learners can be demotivating. It's important to remember that everyone learns at their own pace and to focus on your own progress and celebrate your achievements. Now, let me ask you, have you ever compared your English skills to someone else and felt discouraged? How did you deal with those feelings? Try writing about your experience in English to further develop your writing skills. Let's consider another situation. Imagine you're trying to have a conversation in English, but you're constantly worried about making mistakes. This fear makes you hesitant to speak, and you end up saying very little. Has that ever happened to you? And how do you think this fear of making mistakes affects your ability to improve your spoken English? My friend Javier struggled with this a lot. He had a good understanding of English grammar and vocabulary, but he was terrified of speaking because he didn't want to make mistakes and sound silly. This fear held him back from practicing, which in turn slowed down his progress. One day, he joined an online English conversation group where the focus was on communication rather than perfection. The other members were also learners, and the atmosphere was very supportive and encouraging. Javier realized that making mistakes was a natural part of the learning process, and that it wasn't something to be ashamed of. The more he spoke, even with errors, the more comfortable and confident he became. He learned that the goal of communication is to be understood, and that a few mistakes here and there don't prevent that. So, what can we learn from Javier's experience? That the fear of making mistakes can be a major barrier to improving your spoken English. It's important to remember that mistakes are a natural part of learning and that the more you practice speaking, even with errors, the more confident and fluent you will become. Now, let me ask you, have you ever been afraid to speak English because you were worried about making mistakes? How did you try to overcome that fear? Try writing about your experience in English to practice expressing your thoughts. That brings us to the end of another episode of Language Leap. I hope our stories and discussions today have given you some encouragement and practical tips for your English learning journey. Remember, it's okay to feel overwhelmed, to struggle with pronunciation, and to compare yourself to others. The key is to be kind to yourself, break down your goals, celebrate your progress, and keep practicing. Don't let fear hold you back from speaking. Mistakes are simply stepping stones to fluency. If you found this episode helpful, please give us a like and share it with other learners.